Hi everyone, Gary here from Echidna Sewing, and today we're going to take a really close look at the VMA walking foot industrial straight stitch machine. So this is the V-0303ED, and this is an automatic walking foot machine, a heavy-duty walking foot machine, and really popular model in the market these days for doing a whole raft of different things, whether you're a bag maker or you're doing some home upholstery or you're refitting your car or your boat, or any heavy-duty work you need to do that needs something a bit more than a standard sort of apparel gauge machine. This could be the right machine for you. So I'm going to go through how easy it is to thread, how easy it is to set the stitches, and some of the automatic features on here that really do make this a standout product. So let's dig in. Okay, first things first, let's have a look at what you get when you get one of these guys. Obviously the machine is a genuine industrial machine. Looking at the inclusions, you've got your thread stand at the back here for 2 spools. Obviously you can use the large spools of thread on here. As we come down to the machine, this is a direct drive machine, so you've got the servo motor built onto the main shaft of the machine. There's no big clunky motor underneath the bench, so that makes it a whole lot easier for setup and transportation, and a bit lighter as well. You've got your control panel here, which gives you all the automatic features, and this one has underbed thread trimming, it has auto back tacking, auto foot lift, and really pretty comfortable machine to use. You've got a built-in bobbin winder up here. We're going to wind a bobbin in a moment. Obviously your threading path, your tension. It has thread clamping. That's a huge advantage as well. We'll talk about that when I demonstrate it. You've got your foot pressure adjustment here, so that's important. You can adjust the amount of pressure downwards on the foot. Let's have a look at, let's tip it back actually and have a look. As an industrial machine, it's got an underbed oil sump, and as I tip this guy back, you'll see it even talks to you. So it tells you what you've done. It just said system failure. That's because we tipped the machine back. Full industrial. There's no plastic parts or anything in here. This is all metal construction. You've got your oil sump down here and an oil pump there, which pumps oil up everywhere through the machine. This is where your bobbin case goes, and in fact I'm going to take that bobbin case out just quickly while I've got it up. And yeah, now of course as an industrial machine it's important to know that you do need to be careful when you're using these guys, because there are certain things that you shouldn't do. One is, if this machine is in the up position, you must keep fingers away. If you have your fingers here and that machine comes down, it will chop your fingers off. So you've got to be particularly careful there. So whenever you're lifting the machine back and putting it down, always 2 hands up on the machine itself. And of course, the only time you ever really need to do this is if you're doing your general maintenance, changing oil, or just cleaning the machine. Otherwise, there's no need to lift the machine up. You certainly don't need to lift the machine to change the bobbin. So I'm now going to lower that back down, and it's just a case of lowering it back into the sump. Okay, so we've got the bobbin case out. They're basically the main components. Oh, one other thing to mention, it's got your reverse lever here, and you've also got an automatic soft touch reverse right here, and we'll show you that when we're stitching on it. There is a LED light built into the machine. It's quite bright, so it does give you really good light on your work area. It includes the bench, which is a full plywood bench, so it's not chipboard, it's not particle board, it's going to last some time for you, and a full metal stand. Under here you've got your manual knee lever for lifting the presser foot, but it also has auto foot lift, which we'll show you soon, and of course your pedal to drive the machine. So first things first, let us have a look at how to wind a bobbin. So we're going to talk about bobbins first before we dig into winding a bobbin. This is what we call an oversized bobbin machine, and that's one of the things that makes it more heavy duty, because it's capable of using a much heavier thread. And I'm going to give you a little comparison here. If you had a standard industrial machine that was kind of more an apparel gauge machine, this is the size of the bobbin case, and this is the size of the bobbin. On this one, or an oversized hook or a heavy duty machine, you'll notice that the bobbin case is considerably bigger, and that's the bobbin case off this machine and the bobbin, and it holds a lot more thread. And that's important because Often you're going to be using a heavier thread on a machine like this, so you do need that bigger capacity. And we also need that bigger hook and bigger bobbin case to actually handle that heavier thread. So I'm going to wind on this one, I'm going to wind it using this yellow, this is a bonded polyester thread. This is an M40 thread, and that makes it about a 70 tex, which is a pretty heavy thread. And I'm going to give you a bit of a comparison there. Hopefully the camera is going to pick this up. This spool of thread here is a standard sewing thread, and that's a 24 tex thread. So 24 tex, 70 tex, and then I'll show you the comparison right up to a really heavy thread. This is an M20, which is about a 200 tex thread. And this will work on this machine as well, quite comfortably. But of course, the bigger the thread, the heavier the thread, the bigger the needle has to be. And that's one of the limitations on, they say, a standard industrial machine. Trying to put a heavy thread on that, you've got to have a big needle, and you particularly need to have a bigger bobbin case and hook mechanism as well. And that's why standard industrials don't necessarily handle a really heavy thread very well. This one does, however. And for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to wind some of the yellow thread, this bonded polyester thread, on. So to wind your bobbin thread, you just need to put it up on one of the spindles just there. And I'm just going to cut a nice clean end on that and pop the thread through the back of the machine here. And I'm just going to cheat a bit and pull that around. Hopefully the camera's following me there. And always make sure that your thread is coming off perfectly vertically to the eyelet. That's very important. Now I mentioned it has a built-in bobbin winder, and that's your little bobbin tension system here. The thread doesn't go through this while you're sewing, it's only for winding the bobbin. And so we pop the thread in there. Might get the camera over here and we can see there's a little eyelet at the back that goes, the thread goes through just there, and then it goes in between the tension discs and then out the second eyelet. Now it's important that the thread is between those tension discs there. We take our bobbin, pop that on the spindle like that. Now, one of the things that happens with heavier threads is they have a bit of a mind of their own, and they're very springy. So here's a little tip for winding a bobbin. In fact, you can do this on any machine. If you wind the thread around clockwise a few times, and then take the thread that's coming to the bobbin from the tensioning system there and wind it back the other way a few times, and then engage the bobbin, take up that slack, and then just get your scissors and trim that thread back there. That will start winding every time perfectly. Now, here's a lovely little feature on most industrial machines. If I'm sewing and I'm doing whatever job I'm doing, I can actually be winding a bobbin at the same time, which is kind of handy. In this case, I want to wind the bobbin independently. And when we're doing that, we just make sure that there's no thread in the needle. We do have a presser foot lift lever at the back here, and we'll get a shot of that for you. And we just lift the foot to a manual position. And at this point now, I can just start sewing and the bobbin will start winding. The needle's going up and down, be mindful of that, but there's no thread in there, so it's not going to hurt. And the reason I've lifted the presser foot to make sure that when I'm winding a bobbin is I don't want the feeders and the presser foot running on themselves, because that just prematurely wears those things out. So I'm just going to keep winding. If I wanted to fill the bobbin, there is a little stopper here that will release that. Now you'll notice while I'm filling it, there's also going to be oil flowing up into the little sight gauge there. I'll stop it again and start it again. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. And as a tip, I like to ensure that you wind the bobbin this way at least once or twice, or once every 2 bobbin winds. And that way you're running the machine at full speed, you're getting oil circulating everywhere, and you're getting oil down into the hook or the stitching mechanism, which is really important. Now, if we didn't want to fill the bobbin, we could take it off now. To be quite frank, I don't need to fill the bobbin, so I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to flick the bobbin winder back. I'm now just going to lift that off the spindle, and there is a handy little cutter just here to cut that thread for you. Now, of course, if I had this spool on there and that was just my normal spool for winding bobbins, I would just leave that thread there until I need to wind the next bobbin. But in this case, I'm going to use the yellow thread to stitch with as well. So now, I don't know if you saw that, that's what thread does. See how it's all unraveled there? That's because it's a heavy duty thread and it's really springy, so I'm just going to probably try and salvage that. Pull that back off. Little tip after you've wound a bobbin, instead of letting that happen, just get it back into the bobbin case. And that will not, you won't lose all your threads. So let's thread the bobbin case. So this is your standard bobbin case on this machine, and it drops in with the thread coming off from that angle. Hopefully the camera's got that. And we just pop that in there, and then the thread drops in and then under that little spring. And as you're looking at the bobbin should be spinning clockwise. And if it's spinning anti-clockwise, then you've got the bobbin in upside down. So there's our bobbin threaded. I know the thread's in there. It's supporting its own weight. That's good. And loading the bobbin is just a case of making sure the needle is in the up position. Now, if you're at all concerned about this, you know, some people like to turn the machine off whenever they're working with loading their bobbin. That's entirely up to you. My tip is, if you don't turn it off, just make sure your foot is not on the pedal, because the last thing you want to be doing is loading a bobbin and accidentally make the machine work. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to tip the machine back just quickly and show you how the bobbin goes in. And hopefully the camera can get a really good close-up of this. Now, imagine the machine is sitting down, you reach up under here and you can put the bobbin in it, and you can get really, really good at that. You certainly do it blindfolded, no dramas. But my little tip is, when you're putting the bobbin in, the latch will be sitting horizontal. You just simply, with this part of your finger, locate the spindle, which is just there, touch the spindle, and then just slip the bobbin case on and hear it click. Make sure you hear it click into place. And that's all there is to loading a bobbin. So if I pop that back down again, I'm going to take it out again and show you how easy it is. So we'll load it without seeing where it's going. I can feel the spindle. Click, we're in. It's really, really simple. Okay, let's look at threading the machine. Okay, so let's take a look at threading the needle now. Pretty simple. Going to use the same thread as I did for the bobbin, so I'm just simply going to pull that thread out of there. Remember, it doesn't go through here for normal sewing. I have a lot of people get machines and they ring me and say, oh, my machine's not working, and when we get to the bottom of it, they've still got it through this tension for regular sewing, so it doesn't go through there. Now you'll notice when it comes into this first hole just here, there's 3 guides. Now the reason there's 3 holes or guides there is that we could twist the thread over and over again, and that helps eliminate a lot of the natural tendency for thread to twist on itself. It also does add a bit of tension, and in my case here, I don't need it to go through all 3, but I am going to take it through 2. That's generally more than enough. And so that just helps straighten the thread out and eliminate some of this natural twist of heavy threads. Now we then come into this pre-tensioning system here, or pre-tensioner, and it goes into the first little hole, and then it loops around and goes into the second one, and then it goes down through the little tension here. And this is a very delicate little tension, but that's very important for setting or adjusting the thread tail length after a trim. And then we come down through this guy just here. And then we need to come down and go through the tension disc. Now I still have my presser foot in the up position, and when the presser foot is up, the tension discs are open. That's called the tension release system. And so as long as the presser foot is up, you'll find the thread will go into the tension discs quite easily. If it's down, it's much harder to get the thread into the tension. And a lot of people do that, and they start sewing and then there's no tension on the thread and you get a big bird's nest, which you don't want. So always thread the machine with the presser foot in the up position. And even if you do this, hold the thread, give it a bit of a pull and make sure it is in the tension correctly. Then you need to pick up the check spring. That's the check spring just there. And then it goes under the check spring bar there. And then it comes into this guide, and then we just take the end and thread it through the take-up lever. Very important. If you don't thread through there, you'll jam your machine straight away. And then we go into this guide just here, then into this guide, and then this is the thread clamping system, and the thread goes into that from the left side, so the thread will come down straight behind that clamping system. And I might cut some of this excess tail off, I don't need it all. And then we go into the little hole on the top of the, just above the needle. and then we go from left to right. Now, one of the nice things about using a machine that's got a big needle and a heavy duty machine is the eye is much bigger. It's much easier to see. So the thread goes from left to right. And of course, that pretty much applies to most industrial machines. When you insert a needle, the scarf of the needle also goes on the inside. So I've now threaded the needle. That's all there is to it. Just got to make sure we draw the bobbin thread because we've just rethreaded the bobbin. There's a large tail of thread underneath there. So just turn the machine towards you, holding the needle thread, and pull the bobbin thread up, and then you can use the needle thread to pull the bobbin thread through, and there we have both the needle thread and the bobbin thread out through the back of the foot. Okay, machine is threaded. Let's take a look at how we set the stitch length. All right, stitch length is this dial here, so it is a manual dial, and you've got a little push button there. Currently it's set on about 5. To change that, you just simply push that button in and you can turn the dial up to, it's about 8mm stitch length all the way down. Now you'll notice as you try to turn this down, it'll be difficult. So you do need to take pressure off the actual the stitch length lever. And you do that by simply holding the reverse lever down. Just hold it down with this hand and then push that in, and then you can turn this quite freely. Normally speaking, on a high a heavy duty machine, you're going to have a relatively long stitch length. So I'm going to leave that at 6. So now that we've set the stitch length, let's do a little bit of a stitching and just see how it performs. I've just got some basic twill fabric here. I'm going to fold it over to 4 thicknesses because typically on a heavy duty machine using a heavy thread, you're not going to use it to sew light fabric. And it's almost impossible to set a great stitch on a light fabric when you've got a big needle and heavy thread. So we'll go 4 thicknesses of fabric under here. I'm just going to now lower the presser foot down manually, and so we're all good to go. I've got nothing set on other than the machine is going to stop with the needle in the down position. So let's sew a few stitches there. Nice and quiet, and let's have a close look at what this walking foot actually means. So you can see here, if I turn that by hand, the middle foot steps up now, the needle comes down, but while that's happening, the outer foot is actually working in unison with the feeders underneath to take the fabric through. So that is a standard industrial walking foot machine, which means it gets a very positive drive, and no matter what you give it, whether it's leather, canvas, shade cloth, vinyl, rubberback curtains, whatever you want to do, this is going to feed through for you. Now when we get to the end of this seam, I'm just simply going to stop. The needle has stopped down. If I want to pivot and turn around, I can just lift my presser foot manually using my knee lever just here. I'm not sitting in front of the machine, so I'm going to use my hand for a moment. Or what I can do is I can heel back gently on my pedal, and that will lift the foot. So if I just do that, you can see the foot comes up. So now we'll just sew along a little bit more, and if I want to finish the seam now and take the fabric out, this is an automatic trimming machine, but I haven't got trimmers turned on, so I'm going to show you that here. So here's this little scissor button on the control panel. So if I touch that button, it says trimming is on, and that means I'll come down to the end of my seam, and when I get to the end, heel back on my pedal, and it cuts the thread for me. That all comes out. Beautiful stitch, look at that. Perfect. And it's trimmed the thread for me. So we have auto trimmers on here. Now, let's consider we want to do a back tack at the start and finish of the seam. Now the traditional way to do a back tack, of course, on a standard machine is if you do a few stitches and you push your reverse lever, or in this case I could push this reverse button here. So I've got my soft touch reverse, and I've also got my reverse lever on the side. So let's say we've come down, we do a few little back tack stitches, stop, trim the thread. So we've locked off the stitches, start and finish, and we're good to go. But this one also has automatic back tack at the start and finish. Now that's these buttons right here. So if I touch,
front tacking, front double tacking.
That's a double tack at the front or the start of the stitching.
Rear double tacking.
And a double tacking at the rear or the end of the stitching. Now what that means is the machine will automatically back tack at the start, and when I get to the end of the seam, when I heel back on my pedal, it automatically back tacks at the end. So we've got a back tack start and finish, and that's all automatically done. Now notice there's a tail of thread here, and that's because when we start, the thread is under the presser foot, and the tail has to go somewhere, and it's either going to go underneath or on top. I would prefer that to be hidden underneath. I don't want it on top. So this is another feature on this machine that's great, and that's called thread clamping. That's that little device there. So I'm going to turn that button on.
Electronic thread clamp on.
So electronic thread clamping is on. So now I'm going to start stitching, and you'll see when I get to the end of the seam, no tail. It's actually been sewn in underneath the stitch. So there's no trimming of that excess tail length at the end of the application. And again, absolutely perfect, no tail there at all. So thread clamping is a fantastic feature. We also have a couple of different options for your presser foot lift. So I mentioned we can heel back on the pedal to get the foot to lift. We also have an automatic foot lift option, which gives you automatic pivoting. So if I touch this button,
Midway presser foot lifting on.
what that means is when we get to center seam, it will automatically lift the foot for me. I don't have to do anything, I can turn around. And you'll notice it also has an extremely high foot lift option, so which is really important because most of the time on this sort of machine you're going to be using sort of heavier applications, so having that high lift is great. And when you want to start sewing, you just start sewing, the foot will go down automatically. We'll finish that seam. So aside from the auto foot lift in the center of, or in the middle of a seam, we also have auto foot lift at the end of a seam too. So if we touch that button, that means post thread trimming presser foot lifting is on. So we get to the end of the seam, heel back, and the foot will stay up for, I think it's about 10 seconds before it goes back down again, which is fantastic. Now, I mentioned the auto back tacking. You can adjust that. That's what all these threes are for. You can set more stitches for your back tacking or less stitches for your back tacking. It's very, very flexible, but it's pretty well set at a great position anyway. There is also this other little fantastic button here, which is called they call it W sewing. It's also referred to as like a bar tack stitch, and it's a stitch we use to reinforce parts of a garment or an application that you're doing. And if you watch what happens now, it's doing its whole process. I'm not going to touch anything. It's done that by itself, and it's created what's called a reinforcing, like a bar tack stitch. And you can go along at the end of whatever it is you're making and reinforce all your stress points with that little tiny bar tack, or they call it W stitch. I love that feature, I use it all the time. And you'll also notice here a couple of other things we'll just point out. Your speed of the machine. Now this will go, let's just get out of that bar tack function. It's running at 2,000 stitches per minute. That's the maximum stitch speed on this machine. But if you're doing something quite delicate and you don't want a high speed, you can go right down to 200 stitches per minute. And that means that no matter how hard you push the pedal, that's as fast as it's going to go. And sometimes that's a good feature because you've got your hands full trying to get your folds and all your bindings or cordings right, or whatever it is you're doing. And that's a fantastic feature. I'm going to go back to my 2000. And so look, that's a quick run through on this control panel. A couple of other features. It does have segment sewing. So if I press this button here, the E, that will take me into a segment sewing. And it's telling me it's just going to sew 8 stitches. And I start stitching, it stops and trims the thread for me. I haven't done anything, it's doing it by itself. So it's like its own little sort of segment sewing. And if you've got a lot of repeat processes to do, that could be handy. Turn that off. There's one that lets you create a box or a rectangle of 4 segments. So it's telling me the first segment's going to be 8 stitches, the second segment's going to be 8 stitches, and if I hit that S button, the third and fourth will also be 8 stitches. If I touch that again, we're back into normal sewing. So that's if you've got lots of badges to apply, maybe you just need to sew a perfect square, it will help you with that. And then you can set up to 15 segments, multi-segment sewing, and you can set those stitch lengths to, or the stitch numbers to anything you want to set. So loads of great features on this machine, and for the money, this is fantastic. And given that it's so strong, and I think what we might do now is have a look at just how strong this guy really is. Now thickness is always a challenge on any machine, and I've just got a bit of scrap fabric we've been messing around with, and I can tell you now this is just a medium weight polyester twill with a basically a bit of interfacing in there. So there's 4 layers of fabric and interfacing in there. And if I fold that over, we now have 8 layers. Now we have 16 layers. And now we have 32 layers of fabric in there. That's pretty thick. And that's where having a heavy duty machine is fantastic. So if I heel back on my pedal, the foot lifts up, I can pop that under there, and we are in normal regular sewing. I'm just going to turn my back tacking off for a moment, and we're good to go. So sewing over thicknesses like that is a piece of cake. Heel back on the pedal, trims off. So perfect stitch, easy to do. That's like a hot knife through butter. And you can also turn on those
front double, rear
tacking
double.
features. If you need to reverse a little bit, it's going to do it beautifully. Peel back and away you go. So that's okay, that's fabric. Let's have a look at something a little bit different. I got a little bit of scrap of leather that we were messing around with the other day. This is genuine leather. That's about 2 thicknesses there. So let's sew down on that and see how that's going to handle that. Obviously, perfect, designed to do it, beautiful stitch. What if we had more? So then now we've got 4 layers. And here's the thing with a walking foot. I've now got the suede sort of section of the leather, and that tends to drag on your machine. So a walking foot overcomes that drag. Like I can't even, if I try and push that, it's really dragging. But a walking foot will actually feed that through nice and easily. Without any dramas at all. So that's fantastic. Other things that people do is collars and bindings and seat belts and heavy strapping. This is actually 4 layers of a pretty heavy webbing, and that's tough. That's tough to do, and that will give you lots of needle heat and cause all sorts of grief on a lot of machines. But easy peasy on a machine like this. Totally at ease with it. Not a problem. So it's heavy duty, it's easy to use, the threading's easy, it's really easy to maintain. Taking the needle plate off once every month or so, just cleaning out all the lint and fluff that gets developed in there. Using good quality thread. We have all the needles and everything you need for this, bobbins, bobbin cases, all the spare parts that you may or may not need over time. We can also supply zipper feet, left and right zipper feet for the machine. We can even get piping feet and edge guide feet and all sorts of things. But it's a really good workhorse machine. Great for if you're a hobbyist and you like working with leather, or a lot of bag makers also like this type of machine. So that's it. That's the 0303ED automatic walking foot machine available. And if you have any more questions on that, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And until next time, happy sewing.